Hello YouTube, and welcome again to my channel. I thought I would talk a little bit more about what it was like to be a Jehovah's Witness, specifically with how they actually motivated you. So Jehovah's Witnesses like to claim that they're the most loving religion on earth, if you will, or if you're a Jehovah's Witness, you enjoy the best bond of brotherhood there is on the earth. Is that true? Well, I can tell you, I've traveled many places. And the places I go, if you tell them you're one of Jehovah's Witnesses, you will basically be love bombed and accepted into the local Jehovah's Witness community while you are there. But the question arises, is that true love? Well, Jehovah's Witness love is dependent very much so upon the actions that you do and the way that you meet their standards. So if you're going to all the meetings and you're getting out in service enough and you're commenting at meetings and they deem you to be a spiritual person, they will give you that love. And the more spiritual you are, the more of that love you will receive. However, as soon as you aren't able to keep up with their program of spirituality, you will find that that love diminishes and can disappear. And if you make a mistake, and you transgress the code of morals as they see it, that love can go away completely. And if you make a really bad mistake, then that love can disappear even from your family members. So Jehovah's Witnesses really don't have true love among themselves. They have conditional love. They are taught to believe that true love is conditional. They're taught to believe that God will withdraw his love from you if you don't meet his standards, that God will hold against you your faults, that he'll forgive you for small things, but if you do something bad enough, it's going to take a lot to get his forgiveness and to have his love back. And that's the way Jehovah's Witnesses work. In fact, I had one friend who was not an elder, but he asked me at one point, he said, it must be hard to work with people that have sinned and to be able to respect them after you've dealt with them. And that pretty much tells you everything you need to know about the typical Jehovah's Witness. Now, nobody's perfect. Everybody makes mistakes. It's called being human. So within that religion, you're basically trained that you have to maintain perfection at all times. And the further you stray from that, at some point you're going to be viewed as less of a person. And if you transgress to the point where you're disfellowshipped or you're reproved, it's going to take you a long time to live that down in the term of Jehovah's Witnesses. And that is the way their love works. But what is the true motivating factor behind Jehovah's Witnesses? Is it love? Do they do what they do because they love God? Well, in all honesty, not really. The true motivation behind things Jehovah's Witnesses do are fear and guilt. Fear is the first big motivator. The fear works kind of this way. According to Jehovah's Witnesses, if you do not do what they tell you to, and they believe they're telling you to do what God is telling them to do, you will be destroyed at Armageddon. So there's basically an ever-present death threat that's looming directly over your head. And that is a big motivator for a lot of people. I think that was truly the case for myself. That death threat it takes many forms in different ways for different people. For example, one thing they try to instill in you is the fear of demons. The whole world is lying in Satan's power, and Satan can use anything to distract people from serving Jehovah. And the only way you can escape the demons is by being one of Jehovah's Witnesses. At least this is the way it looks to a very young child when they're being indoctrinated as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And indeed, that's how it looked to me. I remember the terrifying pictures that were in the publications of the destruction happening and the accounts of the demons. There were stories of people that had demons that would harass them, and that really terrified me as a child. And I believe that fear is part of what made me strive so hard to please Jehovah. So typically speaking, a relationship with God should be based on love. You should love Him for what He's done for you, and you should develop your relationship accordingly, for those of you who believe in God. But with Jehovah's Witnesses, that's not really the way it works. It kind of is, but it really isn't. The biggest motivator is fear of death at Armageddon in a horrible manner, or fear of the demons taking over your life, or something along those lines. So fear is always there. And if you don't maintain their standards, there's fear of the repercussions that are going to come within the congregation and without. So if you've made a mistake and you don't tell the elders about it, they instill this fear in you that God is going to reject you because of that mistake that you've made, and that you will die at Armageddon. So based on that, a lot of people are motivated to tell the elders the things they've done. And that can result in judicial committees, because their idea of helping people is, if they've passed a certain point, well, they have to have a judicial committee, and that's helping them. Kind of a strange and odd concept. But along with fear is a lot of guilt. I've talked in videos before about the ways that Jehovah's Witnesses will shame you if you don't do things the way that they want. Well, they also guilt you into doing more things for them. More meeting attendance, more field service, more what have you. So the Jehovah's Witness life is literally built with service to Jehovah at the center of it. And that service to Jehovah in reality is service to the organization. In every facet of the life of one of Jehovah's Witnesses, service to Jehovah is what is supposed to be central to their life. So that means the things they schedule first in their life are their study time, their meeting time, their field service time, and their spiritual time. And everything else becomes second to that. For a good Jehovah's Witness, it's viewed as a bad thing to miss meetings unless there's a really incredible reason. So it's not typical that a good Jehovah's Witness will miss meetings for what they consider frivolous purposes. And oftentimes, even when Jehovah's Witnesses travel to other places on vacation, they will go to Jehovah's Witnesses meetings. Myself, I did that when I traveled. I went to different kingdom halls. And that's how I know that you get love bombed when you go to other places and let people know that you're one of Jehovah's Witnesses. If you go somewhere and participate in the meetings and comment, you're accepted like one of the family. You don't know any of the dirt that's going on in that particular area, but they're happy to see you. They want you to come back. You exchange phone numbers and emails and all this stuff. But most oftentimes you don't really keep in touch with those people. But that contributes to the sense of worldwide brotherhood. So I very much so felt that, because for a long time, whenever I would go places, I would go to the local kingdom hall, and I would participate, and I would be accepted. So that's part of the whole guilt thing. You're guilted into thinking that if you're missing a meeting, you're missing a vital spiritual feeding that is going to hurt your relationship with Jehovah. And literally with everything you do, there's an amount of guilt or fear associated with it. Even for individuals that are working extremely hard to carry on organizational activities, there's always a matter of fear or guilt. I knew one individual, one of the hardest working individuals I knew for the organization. He did everything, dotted his I's, crossed his T's. And if he would make a small mistake, he would be there questioning himself as to whether he was good enough, whether he had done enough. And I found myself in similar positions. And that was just kind of the attitude that we were taught to have. Is you have to serve all the time. Your service has to be perfect. If it's not perfect, you just automatically start beating yourself up that you haven't done good enough. That maybe you're going to get in trouble for this. In fact, I remember a couple of times throughout the course of my spiritual career, if you will, where I made some small, stupid little mistakes, and when I did, they caused me to worry to no end as to what was going to happen because of it. And part of that might have been because of the group of men I was working with, but part of it was also because that was the way we were trained to be. There was always the fear and guilt. And so that being the case, our motivation was also always by fear and guilt. For example, when I wanted to motivate people to get to the meetings and to go on field service, the line of reasoning would be, is that the amount of these things that you're doing demonstrates your love for Jehovah. So if we really love Jehovah with all of our heart, why aren't we doing as much for him as we possibly can? So no matter how much you ever did for Jehovah, there was always a question of, can't you do more? Why can't you change your circumstances to do more? And that was one of the main driving forces behind the whole religion. So anyways, fear and guilt are not the best motivators. They get people to move to action, some of them, not others. Some people are smart enough or whatever to ignore those motivators, and other people just don't seem to care. Maybe they're just in it for the social aspect, which is fine and good. But nonetheless, those are the two biggest motivators to action within that particular religion. And I know that because I was complicit. I was part of that. For a long time, I would utilize those methods to try to get people more active because that's what I was taught. And at the time when I did that, I thought I was doing the loving thing because that's what I was told. I was taught that the best thing for people to do was to be as active as they possibly could, literally to devote their entire lives, and that would bring them the greatest blessings. So myself, just desiring to help people to attain their greatest blessings in life possible and to do the most they could for Jehovah, I always advocated those things. And no doubt you can tell that I have since realized the real situation. So anyways, that's really the bedrock of Jehovah's Witness life. Is there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of guilt. And another thing is there's actually a lot of hypocrisy. The organization is very good at saying one thing and doing something different. It's woven all throughout the culture. It's woven all throughout the literature, and it goes all the way back to day one. The first person to say one thing and do something different was indeed Charles Taze Russell. If you go back and read his literature, he says one thing, but then through the rest of his writings, he does exactly the opposite of what he's saying. And if you read it with an open mind, it's fairly easy to pick up on that. And in the current literature, it's real easy to pick up on when the literature says one thing, but the actual execution of it is something different. And for people that defend witnesses, you can see that with their arguments, they say one thing, but they do something different. And they hold other people to different standards than they hold themselves. And that is very easy to demonstrate if you just have one of their CD-ROMs with their literature on it. So that's another hallmark of that religion. It's something that's very easy to demonstrate. I'm not saying this as my own opinion, but I could demonstrate it. But in this particular video, I'm not going to do that. So anyways, part of this is to let people know that someone who got to the level of spiritual achievement, if you will, that I did, has recognized these things. And I'm not the only one. There are many others. And there are people that got a lot farther than I ever did that recognize the same things. So if you find yourself sitting there and having these thoughts, first of all, you're correct. It's very true. And second of all, you are not alone. So realizing these things is not fun. It wasn't for me. It probably isn't for anybody else. But we can all learn from our experience and move along and find other people that we can talk to that have had similar experiences. So this is my video for this time. Thank you for listening. I'll talk to you next time.